Om Shanti. How many of you have this question that we are meditating, but then we don't know whether I'm a good yogi or not, or whether what I'm doing is right or not, or whether it is effective or not? Yes, and sometimes, children ask that I'm doing yoga, but I don't know what's happening with that yoga, or I don't know whether that yoga is leading to something, or it is effective or not, or what is actually happening as a result of that yoga, I don't know. And yesterday also somebody asked me this question. And today in the Murli, Baba gives us a very beautiful answer about what are the signs of a good yogi. Okay, so what are the visible traits of someone who has good yoga? How do you know that you're a good yogi? So let's listen to that, and this will answer many questions. So we'll take up all the questions that it answers also. Baba says, when you become good yogis and your eyes are not drawn anywhere. Have you seen your eyes lingering on something? So you go to a shopping mall and then your eyes linger on stuff, and then they linger on physical bodies. You see someone and your eyes just linger on that, or they are drawn to something, something or someone. So first thing is, if you are a good yogi, your eyes will not be drawn anywhere. You see what you choose to see. Yes, it's not like something can compel you to see itself. Do you feel that something can compel you to see itself? Yes. Does your phone compel you to see itself? There is a notification and then you feel like your phone is silently calling out to you that you have to check me, check me. Yes, and if you don't do that, then you feel, there is a compulsion. And one thing that everybody in the world agrees with is that compulsive behavior is not the sign of a powerful soul. Yes, so compulsive behavior, where you feel that you are compelled by any of your organs to do something, is not the sign of a powerful being. Yes, and so you have this term OCD, yes, obsessive compulsive disorder. But then I don't know why it's only limited to washing hands. There are so many there are so many compulsive behaviors that we engage in, and sometimes people need to always ensure that their hands are clean and they keep washing it, and then they say that this is OCD, and if you feel a need to wash it even without they being dirty, then it's OCD. But then we do a lot of things that we do out of this compulsive need to do it. And what I just told you, checking the phone is one of them. Yes, and there are many things, there are some people who have a compulsive need to eat all the time. Compulsive eating, compulsive watching, yes, or you say, I cannot remain okay if I don't see you. It can be with a person also. Or if I don't have this thing, then I don't feel okay. So all these are compulsive behaviors. And Baba says that when you become good yogis and your eyes are not drawn anywhere, your physical organs will become peaceful. How are your physical organs? All these organs, the eyes, the ears, the tongue, the skin, the nose, do they always need, they want you or they need you to do something in order to be satisfied? Do you feel a compulsive need to see something, hear something, or taste something all the time? Some have this tongue compulsion, or if you have a compulsive need for lust. So all those things are not the sign of a good yogi. Actually, they are signs of a good bhogi. So who are you? Are you a good yogi? How many of you are a good yogi? Your senses are still and calm. Yes? How many of you think that your senses are peaceful? Your five senses are peaceful. Yes? So that is a good yogi. And if there is, and even if there is a compulsive need to talk back, or you heard something and you then can't stop yourself from answering back, your mouth kind of compels you to speak, all that is compulsive behavior. Yes, or your choice of words is dictated by your emotion, or your behavior is dictated by your emotion, not by your senses. So you see, if you are sensible, you will choose what to see, what to hear, what to register inside, how to respond. All that will be a choice. And and again, it has to be a good choice. There is somebody, I told someone that, why don't you leave drugs? They were taking drugs, and I told them, why don't you leave drugs? And then they said, I do it by choice. I can leave it tomorrow. So, so it's not like you say, I choose to do this. No, you're compelled to do it. Sometimes people don't even understand the difference between what they're compulsively doing and what they're choosing to do. Because if you're doing it as a choice, you have the option to not do it whenever you want. But then most of the things we think we do by choice, but then when you start to restrain yourself, you figure out that you don't have a choice. Yes, and lust is one of them. People say that we believe in this whole culture of lust, and we think that lust is important in a marriage and this and that, and then you tell them to take a challenge, 6-month challenge. Yes, and if they are not able to take up that challenge, it's not because they believe in lust or they choose to be lustful, but they are slave of their sanskar of lust. So you can be a chooser if you are not a slave. And we are leading the lives where we are slaves of our senses and we are not choosers, but we want to believe we have a choice. So we keep saying that I'm doing all this by choice. But it's not like that if you see closely. So Baba says, check yourself whether you are a master of your senses or a slave of your senses. So Baba says that if your stage of yoga becomes very good, the eyes are the main things that deceive you. If your stage of yoga becomes very good, you can feel that you have reached the state of retirement in your youth. So, just like when the body gets old, then the senses are supposed to cool down. But I don't know if that's happening these days, because in Hindi there is a very good saying, "Aap bhaye bude trishna bhai jawan," which means you are getting older, but your desires are getting younger. And they are becoming more forceful. And that happens according to how you are conditioning yourself as you grow. So you see, in earlier times when a person was growing old, he was telling himself that now I'm 40, now I'm 50, this doesn't suit me and I should be refraining from this, or I should be controlling my senses. And this is why at the age of 60 you could see them as a different person. But I don't know if that's happening these days. And I will tell you one personal experience I had. And there was this brother, and he was 65 years of age, and he came and he undertook the course, and then he said that I'm going on a world tour. And I said, okay. So he said, I will be back after 6 months. And I said, okay. And then he said, I want to tell you why I'm going on a world tour. So I said, okay, you're welcome to tell me whatever you want. And then he said, I have a daughter. She married against my wish. And I want to finish all my wealth before I leave the body, so that she doesn't get a penny out of it. And so I'm going on this world tour. And if this doesn't finish my whole money, I'll make 2-3 more. But I'll finish all the money I earned before I go, so that she doesn't get a penny. So so you see that, so this is an example of a person who is such a slave of his anger, and 60 above, and this is how he's behaving. And why? Because this is how he has conditioned himself. And so it doesn't matter how old you are. What matters is how you are conditioning yourself to be. And I always give this example, sometimes people say that physical exercise makes you happy. Yes, so there is scientific proof that there is some hormone released when you exercise, and then it makes you happy. But then I always ask children, if physical exercise makes you happy, then why does household work not make you happy? Because it involves a lot of physical exercise. If you're doing jhadu pocha, you should be the happiest person on earth, because that involves a lot of physical exercise. So does physical exercise make you happy, or the idea that I'm exercising makes you happy? So it doesn't matter what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what awareness you are in while doing it is what matters. Whether you're working, whether you're aging, whether you're eating, whether you're sleeping, anything that you're doing will only have a benefit when the consciousness in which you are and the thoughts you are creating while doing it are elevated, peaceful, happy thoughts. And so Baba says that if you start, if you are constantly practicing, so you see, what is Raj Yoga? You are constantly staying in the awareness that you are a peaceful being of light, a happy soul, the child of the ocean of happiness. And since Baba is here and he is your father, teacher, and Satguru, and you're always counting your blessings of this Sangam Yug, just like Baba spoke in yesterday's Murli, if you're always watering that remembrance of how fortunate you are, then what happens is you reach a state where you're internally very satisfied. And when you're internally satisfied, then the senses don't attract you too much, because you don't have to run after anything when you know you have everything. And this feeling that I have what I need and what I want, and this is all I want, is achieved when you practice this, being a soul and being in the canopy of Baba and appreciating what Baba is giving you all the time. And so when you are a good Raj Yogi, that is, you are practicing well, then the sign of that is your physical senses become very peaceful. You're very contented. You don't feel the need to depend on your physical senses for internal fulfillment. So you are not gorging through your senses. You're not trying to feed the soul through the senses. And then the second thing is you are not reactive to whatever is coming through the senses, because your senses are peaceful. So you can check what kind of a yogi you are with this criteria. And then Baba says that lust is the greatest enemy. Continue to check yourself. The more you stay in remembrance, the more peaceful your physical organs will become, and the sweeter your nature will become. So one thing is, your organs will become peaceful. So I always tell in the course also that there is a big hole in the soul and you are trying to fill it through your senses, and it doesn't fill like that. Okay, so this is what we are doing. There is a big well of emptiness, an emptiness of knowledge, purity, peace, love, happiness, bliss, and power. And you're trying to fill that emptiness with people, places, and things, names, positions, and titles, money, fame, and everything. And then the well only gets bigger and bigger, it doesn't get filled. And when you come to the awareness of who you are and who you belong to, and you fill yourself with Baba's love, then that hole inside the soul is filled. And then you are not trying to, you're not trying to fill yourself with people, places, things, stuff, positions, etc. And then you're doing everything but from a place of contentment. So this is the sign of a good yogi. And the sign of a good yogi is not someone who keeps sitting in yoga. So some people have this idea that if you are always sitting in yoga with your eyes closed and you don't move, that's a good yogi. And if someone disturbs you, you shout or you curse them. So this is the kind of this is the image of a yogi we have got from the Shastras, that a yogi keeps his eyes closed and keeps doing yoga, and then when somebody disturbs him, he lashes out at them and probably curse them because they disturb them in the yoga. But Baba says that's not a good yogi. What you are doing on the inside must reflect on the outside. And when you are doing this incognito effort of being soul conscious and remembering Baba, then it reflects in you being a master of the senses and you being in a place where your senses are not able to disturb you or attract you. So that's the sign of a good yogi. So this is what Baba means by being peaceful, your senses being peaceful. Did you get the meaning of how your senses will be peaceful? Yes, because sometimes we hear these terms but we don't understand what they mean. So your senses being peaceful means you see something, you hear something, you are hungry, but your mouth doesn't water. You see something, you hear something, but there is no reaction from inside. And then lust. You are not drawn towards lust. That is the sign of a good yogi. And then Baba says, when you are a good yogi and your senses are peaceful, you become very sweet. So how is sweetness connected to being a yogi and being in control of your senses? So you see, when you wake up in the morning, you do not plan to be bitter. Nobody plans to be bitter when they wake up in the morning. And so we also don't do that. But we find reasons during the day. Yes, there are many things that come up and there are many things which we say, this became the reason why I became not sweet. Not sweet in thought or not sweet in word or not sweet in action. And those reasons that you find during the day for being not sweet come through the senses. Yes, you see something, you hear something, you touch something, you smell something, you just react. You come out of the room, somebody is cooking and then there is a burning smell and then you run. What is burning? Because as soon as you've smelled it, you react. Or you are in a place which is not very fragrant and there is not very sweet smell around you, you don't feel good. So we are a slave of our senses, or you hear one word and your whole attitude changes. So Baba says, when you are a good yogi, these things don't have an influence on you. External information coming through the senses is not able to disturb you. And then you are able to retain your sweet nature and respond in sweetness. Okay? Can you teach, warn, and correct in sweetness? Can you teach, warn, and correct in sweetness? How many of you can do that? Yes. Baba doesn't say that you don't teach or don't correct or don't warn. Baba gives you a lot of warning in the Murli, does he not? Yes, he gives us so much of warning that children, this is the time, end of the cycle, and then you have to meditate, otherwise. And Baba gives us a lot of warning. But do you see how that warning is filled with sweetness? And it doesn't hurt your ego, it touches your heart. And you want your warning, you want your teaching, you want your correction to touch someone's heart and not hurt their ego. You do it in sweetness. But sweetness cannot be artificial. Sometimes you engage in pseudo sweetness, which is like you mean something and you say something. And you're bitter on the inside and sweet on the outside. That doesn't help. When you're sweet on the inside, you don't mind what they said. You don't mind what you saw. You don't mind the loss that happened. You are interested in the soul and you're interested in its upliftment. And when you really mean it from the heart, then your action, your thought, your word, whatever you do after that is filled with sweetness, and the message reaches the heart of that one. So a good yogi is one whose organs are peaceful. And the second thing is all their actions are filled with sweetness. So if you are a good yogi, you're very sweet. And this is the month of Prakashmani Dadiji. And Dadi is known to be the sweetest. And Dadi had this personality where everybody felt like Dadi is so approachable. This is my Dadi. Just like you say, Mera Baba, Meri Mama. You could say from the heart, Meri Dadi. And that was Dadi's personality. And Dadi had sweetness written all over herself. And this happens with purity. The purity, the power of purity which cools down your senses makes you very, very sweet. And Baba says today, you will then feel, when you become very sweet, you will feel, I was so bitter previously and I have now become so sweet. You will also wonder how I didn't react in this situation and how I could smile and be so sweet and respond to it. Baba is the ocean of love, and you children also have to become that. Therefore, Baba says, look at everyone with love. Now, when you look at anyone, if you're body conscious, you cannot look at everyone with love. Because what you are looking at will color your emotions. Yes, their age, their look, how they dress, how they eat, what they are doing. Everything will color how you feel about them. But when you're completely soul conscious and you can look through the body, so there is a law which says we perceive as we are. So if you are soul conscious, you look at the soul. So you are conscious about yourself being a soul. When you look at someone, you look at the soul. That's how it works. And when you're soul conscious, you look at the soul, you can look at them with love, because then you remember this is Baba's child. And when you look at anything else, you cannot be loveful. That's the law. Now Baba says, look at everyone with love. If you cause anyone sorrow, listen carefully. If you cause anyone sorrow, you will die in sorrow. जो दुख देते हैं वो दुखी होकर मरते हैं. Baba has given this very bitter truth to us. And when do you cause sorrow to someone? When you look at who they are, how they behave, or what they have and what they do, instead of looking at the soul. You look at their physical, professional, religious, national, social identity, or you look at what they have or what they do, instead of looking at their true self, which is they are soul and they are children of Baba. Then you cause them sorrow. And if you give sorrow, you die in sorrow. That's the law. The Father says, therefore, become very, very sweet. Okay, so you are doing you're not doing it for anyone else. You are doing it for yourself. And then Baba says that this yoga, the praise of this yoga, this Raj Yoga is very great. There are many yoga ashrams in the world, but all of them teach physical Hatha Yoga. Yes, they teach you to control the physical senses through physical methods. Yes, so there is this this brother, and he was telling me some days back that there are models in the fashion industry, and there are people who smoke a lot so that they don't feel hungry. So what is Hatha Yoga? When you understand that controlling the senses is important, but you don't know how to do that with yoga, with love of Baba, so you use some physical method to do it. So somebody has realized that eating is, what they are eating more than they should according to the profession they are in. And then the method they use to do that is detrimental to them in the long run. So this is what Hatha Yoga is all about. You're forcefully trying to win over the senses. The sense of the tongue, the eyes, the ears. So there is an example of Surdas piercing something into his eyes to go blind, because he didn't want to see the world, because what he saw affected him. So Baba says all that is Hatha Yoga. People do these things in Hatha Yoga, which is you're forcefully trying to overpower your senses. And then sannyasis realize that lust is a vice, and they then don't know how to overcome this sanskar of lust. So they take medicines for purity. And Baba says all that is part of Hatha Yoga. Hatha means by doing it by force. And Baba says you are not Hatha Yogis. So there are two words, one is Daman, another is Vijay. Daman means you are trying to stifle your senses. And second thing is you want to be a ruler of your senses. You are victorious over your senses. So Baba says this path that we are in is not about stifling the sensual needs. It's about overpowering your senses through realization that you are more powerful than them, and you are in a state of complete contentment and happiness with this connection with Baba. So this Raj Yoga is very different from Hatha Yoga. And Baba says, this Raj Yoga of yours enables your boats to go across. And you cannot go to Satyug by practicing Hatha Yoga, because you have not changed your sanskars. You are not a different person. You are the same person using a method to stifle your senses. So that will not make you go to Satyug, but this will. Because by doing this, you change your sanskar. Baba says that you have continued to come down the ladder through those many types of Hatha Yoga. Now, Hatha Yoga is not a new practice. It has been in India for several years. And Baba says, still you have only depleted yourself. So it's not through Hatha Yoga that you make a better world. You make a better world through Raj Yoga. The main thing is remembrance. So if you want to uplift your consciousness, you change who you remember. Because you become like the one you remember. So if you're remembering the old and dirty world, then you cannot become pure and peaceful. But if you remember your Father, who is the ocean of purity, then you become like your Father, and then you can win over your senses. You have to check that your mind isn't directed towards vice. And vice comes from a place of neediness. And if your mind is still needy, yes, it needs to take its peace and happiness and bliss from external pursuits. That means you, the soul, are still empty. Those who are vicious are said to be impure. That is, they are worth shells. A vicious person is not an asset. He is a liability. Yes. And do you know there is so much of wealth in the world today? And there are so many children who are earning very well, and their parents are very unhappy. They are not happy because those children are not capable of sharing their heart, their time, or their wealth with the parents who gave birth to them in the first place. Why? Because wealth doesn't make you happy. A big heart makes you happy. Yes, and a fulfilled soul makes you a giver. It's not external things. So if you're vicious, even if you have everything, you are like somebody who has nothing. Because you use everything just to fill that hole in your soul. And you don't have anything to give or share with anybody. And only when you are viceless, then you become a giver, and then whatever little you have is enough. Because you're willing to share, you're willing to offer, and in sharing it multiplies. So a vicious soul, even if they are earning, even if they have everything, they are no good because they can't share it with anyone. They are so empty inside that they behave in a very miserly manner. Okay, so viciousness and selfishness go together. And only when you're viceless, you can be selfless. Okay, so Baba says, if you are still vicious, you are no good. So Raj Yoga makes you viceless, and then you become someone who can do some good. Or a lot of good, depends on how pure you are. Okay, Om Shanti.